Jurassic Park here. He's a bit pissed off. What horsepower do you think it's going to do? Yeah? What, an ethanol? Yeah, I think you're right. I think pump will probably get about, yeah, about 680. What, less? Yeah, alright. Okay, so that's Chris's pistons in. We're all taut down at the bottom, so all that's left to do now is put his head studs in, head gasket, and once we've finished building his head we can put that on. I'm just going to put his lower cradle on and take this down to the next unit. However, I've got Louis' head here, which I've just spent the afternoon cleaning up, getting all the sealant off inside the plug holes. We'll send this to the shop now to get cleaned and a skim on the bottom. But whilst we're here, I thought I'd show you this. So this is something we did when we were looking at porting the cylinder heads. So if you're eagle-eyed, you'll notice that this is actually in bits. And the reason we did this on these cylinder heads, one of the reasons why they get up to temperature really quickly is because the manifold is actually internal to the cylinder head, so it's actually water cooled. So you imagine from your exhaust, your manifold is actually inside. So obviously when we're opening this up, we've got water jackets, which is why we've got these two core plugs there. So we had the head cut open just so we could see how far we can go without breaking into the water jackets. I mean, you don't want to take it to the line, do you? So this just gave us an idea of how much we could actually port it. And again, you can just see the water jacket and the coolant vent valve at the top. But yeah, like I was talking about Chris's cylinder head. So yeah, so if you look at the porting, you can actually see how this has been shimmed off and blended. So what we actually do, because this is a kit you can buy, or I think actually someone's used Quick Steel or something. We didn't do this cylinder head basically. This is actually off Sam's Golf that blew up, and when the cam was fitted incorrectly, you can just see damage it did to the cylinder head. Where is it? Anyway, this is a buggered cylinder head. But yeah, you can just see, as I mentioned, them dividers we take out and throw away on big builds we do. I mean, it's essentially these dividers work in conjunction with the intake, the stock intake, which has got swirl flaps. And obviously with an RPC manifold or an aftermarket billet intake, it doesn't have swirl flaps, so they become redundant. So even though it's just a thin bit of metal, every little helps, doesn't it? So that's why we do away with them. So yeah, anyway, that's Chris is all done. We're just going to put the lower cradle on now and then take it to the other unit where we can build it up. Welcome back to the channel, guys. Chris's build part 3. This is where it's going to start accelerating now. So we had a few issues with his block, like we showed you in the last video. I didn't show you actually. So we had a small delay for a couple of days because TPS sent us the black lower bearings just loose in the packet, and they look like this. So yeah, so that was bad. So Dave is just reassembling the cylinder head now, so we're putting new valve stem seals on. We have done the valves. So yeah, so Dave is just cleaning up the intake valves. These ones we had to replace. These old ones were riddled with pre-det. You can just see the difference once they're cleaned. That's how they turn out. So yeah, so we've had the head decked, skimmed. See all these valves, all nice and cleaned. Valve seats have been cut. So these valves, actually the exhaust valves, I did mean to mention this, but it got lost in the last video. So these are oversized by 2mm. If I had a stock valve I'd show you, but these are just ever so slightly larger than stock, which is again going to help flow this exhaust out, especially with it being imported. But yeah, we've had to supply new intake valves because I can just find them. So these are his old valves, and if you can just see, they are riddled with pre-detonation. And bearing in mind this melted a piston. But yeah, so this happens when you've got poor quality fuel, or when it's been mapped incorrectly to the fuel it's running. However, Chris, the owner, obviously spoke to the previous builder tuner, and the car was actually running or mapped to octane boost. So what we can deduce from those exhaust valves is maybe the customer or the owner at the time wasn't running octane boost like he should have been. So yes, that would be one of many reasons why this engine failed, and they're all, let's get some more. Some are worse than others. But yeah, really bad pitting. So I did say to Chris I wouldn't want to stick them back in, even though they probably would have been alright. So we've supplied some fresh intake valves. So Dave is just doing, we've done the stem seals. Dave is just putting the beehive springs back on, and then we can fix the head to the block, and then I can crack on with the timing and get this all built up. So as I said, it is going to accelerate now. Still got a load of jobs to do, but with the engine being the main bulk of this job, this car should be back together in a day or so. Depending on how we get on with, as I said, got a few trick bits we need to work around with the Plex boost controller, exhaust gas temperature sensor, and the turbo. So the turbo is obviously, it's going to have a very specific way it sets up, and that's what I can think is going to be the most time consuming, head scratching part of it. But we've had a look at it and we pretty much know what we've got to do. So anyway, we're going to crack on with this. Dave's going to crack on with finishing this off. I mean, it looks beautiful, that, doesn't it? I love this part of the build, when you see everything is all nice and new and freshly decked. It's just great. So Chris will be pleased anyway. We always send customers updates and that. So yeah, so Dave's going to crack on with that. Should be about an hour or so, and then we will leak test it. If we've got time, I'll show you how we leak test it. What we have done as well off camera, we sort of ran out of battery when we were building it. We checked what we call the piston deck height, so that is where the crown meets the top of the deck of the block, so it shouldn't be too proud. We are absolutely blood on perfect with this. So these pistons do lower compression slightly, but it's another thing we check for as well. Obviously if your piston crown is too high, you're going to hit the head. I mean, bear in mind we've got probably 1.5 mm head gasket on here as well, but that is one of the other things we check and measure with the DTI gauge. It's just a bridge with your DTI, and obviously we measure across the cylinders the deck height. So yeah, so that's pretty much ready to be built now. We've got all his oil pump and that sorted. Just ordered some sensors because he's got the old piston cooling valve, which I'll show you in the next clip, because we're gonna put his oil cooler on now, his takeoff plate to his filter housing. So I'm going to crack on with that, and Dave's going to crack on with this, and then we can put it all together. So that's good, isn't it? I am just going to start the timing on the balance shafts. So got all my new tensioners guides here. chains, we always give the chains a good soak for about at least 12 hours before putting them on. So you do need a kit, a timing kit, and we use this one from Nielsen. So because this sprocket is what we call floating, so it's basically on a keyway, which fixes the end of the crank. So we need to take this off, and then we need to fit our dowel bolt, which is going to secure the cog against the crank and stop it slapping around and coming off the keyway. We'll show you that actually. Yeah, I'm just going to get a bolt for this, 24mm, undo that, and we can take the sprocket off. I'll show you the back, and then we can do these balance shafts here, get all this timed up, and then once we put the head on, it's just a case of timing the cams to the main drive, and then the oil pump, and then oil pump and sump can go back on, and then we can start putting all the auxiliary parts onto the engine. So I'm going to crack on with this now. So yeah, 24mm socket. As Dave just rightly pointed out, I did say bolt, but I meant socket. So here's the keyway. You see that? And that lines up once the crank is at top dead, which we can see. It's more or less at top dead. Then this wants to fit on the keyway. And I usually just give him, with a rubber mallet, just a bit of a dink. So we've got two little marks. Got an arrow here. If you can see that, an arrow there. So this one should be around about 7 o'clock. That one should be around about 8 o'clock, or just past. And then what we're looking for on these balance shafts, we've got a little mark here. So this one's to point roughly 1 o'clock. Now on this one, we've got a little dot here. However, this cog also needs to line up with this. And it's really hard to see this, but there are two marks on the back of this cog which line up with this dot here. So what you have to do, I believe you have to rotate it 12 times before it comes in time. Oh, you can just see actually, just by luck we're almost there. And if you can see that, two little marks on the back of the cog. So when I move this now, it's a bit hard to do with one hand. That balance shaft is perfectly in time now. And again, this one's about 2 o'clock. So now we can put our chain on. As I said, we've got a chain down here soaking in oil. So we're just going to crack this off, take this tension off because we're going to replace that, and then we can get all our guides on. So I'll crack on with that. So what we're looking for is our two links. They're 15 links apart, I think, if I remember right. So yeah, so we've got a coloured link here, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, yeah, so 15 links. There's another coloured one here, and then at 8 o'clock we've got one there. So here's our top guide going on. And then what we do is we torque these up. So the torque setting on these is 30 Newton meters. So we've got our little torque wrench, and after we've got the guide in and the tensioner, we'll go around and just check the correct torque. So we've got a little corner one, again brand new, genuine, and these are the revised guides. I'll show you why. So basically the old style guide didn't have this lip here, which obviously when you've got a slack chain keeps the chain in place. The old ones never had that. So now what we're waiting for, you see, we just need our tensioner and our tensioner guide as well. and making sure that all these links are where they should be. I mean, they're so easy to time these engines, you can't really get it wrong, with it being all colour coded and whatnot. So yeah, we're just going to get a tensioner now, and that's pretty much done. So you can see as this tensioner goes in, it's going to pull all the chain tight where it should be. Then we nip this up to 45 Newton meters, and we're just going to go around now and make sure all these 30 Newton meters. So I've got my little torque wrench. So there we go, that is the bottom balance shaft assembly all timed up to the crank. If you don't do this properly, yeah, you will get a lot of vibration on your engine. It won't be steady, basically. Okay, so much to Dave's annoyance, he has just built his head back up, but I've just been speaking to Chris regarding these inserts here that have been left in. If you look at the moment, see where we've got this step at the bottom. If you leave them out like that, it's going to create turbulence. But if we leave them in, so these dividers, might have to get you to just hold this camera. So if we leave them in, because this cylinder head, because we've got a multi-port injection with quite heavy injectors, I'm not sure if he's going to carry on running the 1200cc's or the 980cc's, but basically at this power level it's going to become more reliant on these top injectors. What happens, so with any fuel or any solvent, this is obviously brake cleaner, and if we were to pretend we're injecting, what you get is pooling, and this is what's going to happen with the fuel. That's not what we want. You see it just dripping off. It's not what we want, basically, on a big power build. So we're going to remove these, and to remove these, what we now need to do is strip down the head again, and we're going to blend these out, because it's something we do. And as I said, when you've got these injectors that are taking the majority of the load, we want to have a clean path, and this is one reason why we don't polish the intake. We port it and smooth it, but we don't polish, because the same thing can happen on this surface. If it's mega polished, you're going to get pooling of the fuel where it all comes together. So I've just spoken to Chris. It is going to be a bit more time, but we're here now, aren't we? The head's off. If he was to have this done afterwards, he's going to be paying a lot more money. So annoyingly, we're going to strip back ahead, blend these out, get the head washed, and go back from there really. But I think it's a good shout. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, this is Chris's high pressure pump. We are just going to drill this out to 4.5mm. As I said, this just helps relieve the amount of duty you have to run on the low pressure to maintain rail pressure on the multi-port injection rail, so the top rail. So that's what we're going to do now. So this is just a 15mm, and then we take this off and put it in a vise, and then we're going to drill down.